through your freedom.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Well, golly gee williker, folks. Welcome back again. Oh, cerveza cough. I need to get more Jim Jones juice boosters. Yeah, welcome back. What are they going to hit us with next? Well, I'll tell you. It's quite interesting, is it not? The last video, I covered how, right, the United States, England, NATO are all kind of sneaking into Ukraine, kind of Vietnam-esque. Is it not? Well, I think you should be a prepper. I think you should have food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense. I think you need a plan. I think you need to understand that 10-mile radius around your place, because that's where the crap is going to affect you. That's right. It'll affect you. Now, we got a lot of interesting stuff going on, do we not? Oh, the world, what an incredible web they've weaved. Yeah, you bet, because they have done nothing but deceived. Be a prepper, folks. More SHTF war. I told you about the US, UK, NATO side. Now let's get into the Russian side. The other guys, what are they doing? It is incredible, folks. And I just love satire. It just makes me laugh inside. Not really. Putin has broken his silence, and he says Russia is going to triumph in Ukraine. Well, of course, the mainstream media won't play that, and they won't give the explanation of what he is saying. They won't support his side. Of course, naturally, we shouldn't. They're the enemy because they're over there, and anyone over there must be bad because we're over here, and we must be good because, that's how we like to see ourselves. Folks, in Russia, they're thinking the same thing. In China, they've got the same attitude. In India, they believe they're correct. In Brazil, they think they're correct. In Sweden, they think they're correct. Any way you look at it, there is escalation in these tensions, and it is a Cold War. Now, Cold War means the superpowers are in a standoff, and they're not directly fighting with each other. So when the United States and England, France joined forces, right, early NATO, to oppose communist Soviet Union, that was a Cold War. The English, the French, and the United States were at the forefront of nuclear weapons testing throughout the late 40s, 50s, 60s, etc. And on the other side, you had Russia, the Soviet Union, doing the same thing. Now, there were conflicts during the Cold War, most notably Korea and Vietnam. But there was also a very, very strategic war being fought south of the border. We all know about Cuba. That was almost a war. In fact, the CIA did the invasion. They literally invaded. They didn't just do some, shall we say, training and consulting, military advisement. No, they actually did an invasion. It's called the Bay of Pigs. And they got their asses handed to them big time. But communism has swept into Central and South America during the Cold War. And it was supported by the Russians and now the Chinese. I shouldn't say Russians, I should say Soviets, because they were communists back then. They're not communists now. There's something quite different. Anyways, moving along, we still have communists in Central and South America. Notably, Peru has been in the news lately because they've screwed up their economy so bad and their currency so badly that they're suffering food shortages and mega inflation. Don't worry. That concept will visit America to the extent that it's going to need to in order to correct the problems that have been created by our noble leaders in government. But what is the other side doing while the US and Britain and others are fomenting Cold War? We could end up with Vietnam and Ukraine. But I'll tell you what, it's on Europe's doorstep. I don't see why Americans need to get involved. And yeah, that's the protectionist stance that was taken by Americans in World War I and World War II. Well, the U.S. since World War II has been the out front, in front, first in line police on every ridiculous invasion that has cost American lives, dear, precious American lives. We didn't win in Vietnam. Apparently, we didn't win in Afghanistan. Apparently, we haven't really won in Iraq because that's going back over. What are we doing with all of this crap, folks? Well, don't worry. The Russians say they're going to triumph. Here's a quote from Vladimir Putin, the ultimate bad guy. He says, that blitzkrieg on which our foes were counting on did not work. Now, as Americans in modern times, in football parlance, blitzkrieg means an all-out Russian attack. Well, blitzkrieg is actually a German word used to describe their military offensive strategy. In football, it's a defensive strategy. In the military, it's an offensive strategy of just charging at the enemy and crushing them. And that was increased in use and practice and perfected by the Nazis of World War II. That's right, the German Nazis. And so Putin, when he says the blitzkrieg on which our foes were counting on did not work, in other words, he's making a Nazi reference to Ukraine yet again. And he's also making a pronouncement that they're failures. Here's another quote from Putin. We will not stop military operations in Ukraine until they succeed. Now, will Putin be good to his word and stay in this fight? Or will Putin turn tail like Biden did in Afghanistan and leave his people to die at the hands of the Azov Nazis? Where are we at in this war, folks? Big, big, big questions. So what else is going on with the other side? Well, there's two countries in this, right? There's two nations in the evil empire. We've got Russia and China. Yeah, China, a trading partner, massive industrial partner of the United States and European Union nations. Well, yeah, they're also opposed to what is going on in Ukraine from the West, and they're siding with Russia and Russia's allies. And China has now used, or rather violated, NATO airspace because they're delivering missiles into Serbia. Now, if you recall Serbia, that was back in the 90s when Slobodan Milosevic and the Serbian war there in the Balkans, they had genocide. They had ethnic cleansing. That's where that term was first used widely in American media. Oh yeah, folks. Serbia back in the news. And China is delivering missiles. Not just missiles, folks, the Chinese version of the American Patriot missile defense system. So they flew in the Chinese versions of our C5 Galaxy. It's the best I can describe them. Basically, it's a flying city. You can transport tanks in these, folks, tanks. I mean, you think of tanks as 100,000 pounds, 200,000 pounds, 300. I don't even know what these things weigh anymore. Right? I couldn't pull them with the green monster, right? If they had them in neutral. That's how heavy these damn things are. Well, China is using and going through the airspace of NATO countries in order to deliver them to Serbia, deliver these missile systems in these massive air transport systems. And Serbia is an ally of Russia. So is this an airspace violation of NATO? And why isn't NATO responding? Is this an invasive move by China in a clear military operation to arm their allies? Are they gearing up for a wider war in Central and Eastern Europe? Is this war profiteering by China selling their missile defense systems to Serbia? Or is this what NATO and the US-led military-industrial complex do and have done for decades and decades and decades? That is, arm opponents in war while politicians paid antagonize their enemies, and then we end up with conflict, however great or small, which keeps us at each other's throats as humans. People don't want to go fight wars. The little people like me and you, we don't want our sons killed, our daughters killed in military attacks, in nuclear, biological, chemical attacks. What is going on here, folks? Well, they're pushing for war. more SHTF, more World War III, and I say you should be a prepper. Food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense. Does it make sense yet to do that? Does it make sense? I mean, you don't have to buy a bunker. You don't have to. You don't have to, call man up and call a tractor dude and bury a big old thing and move in. You don't have to do that, but they did it in the 1950s and 60s, folks. Regular everyday Americans, especially after the Bay of Pigs fiasco and the Cuban Missile Crisis, decided it might be a good idea to have a backup plan. And today, in modern parlance, it's called being a prepper, not being a radical right-wing lunatic, not being a nationalist or a separatist. It's called being prepared for what appears to be inevitable problems economically, socially, and in all ways politically. I'm also going to remind you to set it and forget it on the Prepared Mind channel. Go to the Prepared Mind channel, hit the button, right? Go to the main channel. You'll see videos and you'll see a button that says play all. Just click it, set it and forget it. And that way YouTube sees how popular these topics are and how they need to be spread, how they should promote the sharing of information instead of violating the concept of free speech, the concept of criticizing those in charge. That's the only way to keep those in charge serving us, is to be able to see them, talk about them, criticize them, and also applaud them and encourage them when they do things that we agree with. Currently, right now, I am not agreeing with what the hell is going on, because it's the Bill Gates and the George Soros. It's the Klaus Schmitz and the aristocrats and oligarchs of Europe who are the problem here, not us. Our freedom and liberty is an impediment to them. It's an obstruction to them. It, for us, is a protective barrier to tyranny, and they want to destroy it. So get prepared, folks. Thank you for supporting the Prepared Mind Network. Hit the notification bell, hit the thumbs up, and hit the share button and share this video far and wide. And of course, set it and forget it. Maybe someone will walk by your computer and actually, learn something instead of worrying about Dancing with the Stars and what's going on at the nearest college university about cutting off your own genitals. Maybe they should hear something a little more, shall we say, productive. Anyways, folks, chance favors the prepared mind. Aren't you glad you are a prepper? Semper Fi to all means always faithful, and Godspeed. Get prepped.